administration to get done. So I think we need to start at the local level, right? And I love what Gary talks about, because we need all of the above. We're going to need DER, we're going to need some transmission, but good things do happen when people work together. I mean, our governor led this landmark energy legislation that we have here in New Mexico called the Energy Transition Act that gets us to have carbon-free generation. We have all the technology we need now. Maybe we got the last 20% that we're still working on, but we'll get there. And it's private companies like Gary's that are big. It's why we chose Avangrid and Iberdrola, because of the work that they're doing in technology. So we need to start on a local level and not wait for others to come rescue us. Now, that said, we definitely need the R&D money, right, at the DOE, because you're right, a lot of things started at DARPA and ARPA. And we have funded clean energy innovation in fits and starts, right? We give the Office of Electricity a bunch of money and then we take it back. So we do need that push from the feds, but we also need people like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates that are putting private money in.
Right.
So if I was going to bet on anybody, I'd bet on Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, probably before I'd worry about the federal government getting its act together. But that said, Tony, we go lobby all the time for clean energy, and we don't give up. It's just if you wait, you're going to be waiting a long time.
But certainly we could rely on, in California, we have a number of greenhouse gas mitigation standards which have really pushed innovation and getting seed capital in at the federal level, even with Copenhagen and so forth. We are now finding those standards in place. And certainly with the infrastructure bill and the need for addressing climate change in that portion of the budget, you know, there's now action that's occurring. You know, so Tony, share with us your perspective on, you know, certainly Nevada has seen its fits and starts, you know, but at the end of the day, I think it's 51% better than not in terms of moving
more
forward.
Starts than fits.
Yeah,
for sure. In Nevada, very similar to New Mexico in terms of having a very small federal delegation, relatively small state legislature compared to other states, especially California, where your parents served. You know, to get big things done, it takes big ideas, but it also takes the cooperation of our federal and state regulators as well as elected officials. Two examples that come to mind in the past decade, 2013, we saw where President Obama was going with respect to the future development of coal-fired power plants. We had a number of coal-fired power plants. That was the majority of the energy we'd received going back to the 50s through the 80s until we started developing renewable energy programs. But in 2013, we worked with our federal delegation, specifically Senator Reid and our then Governor Brian Sandoval, to pass legislation, and with their support, I mean, they were very, very active at the state legislative level to have a measured closure of all our coal assets in Nevada. And that has been incredibly successful. In fact, we'll be closing our last remaining coal plant in northern Nevada by the end of 2025. And we couldn't have done it without that state leadership. Conversely, similarly, in 2019, Governor Steve Sisolak got elected. He is very attuned to Western Governors Association priorities, Democratic Governor Association priorities, and came to us and asked, what can we do to help Nevada become more regional? We're not part of an RTO, we're not part of an organized transmission market. What could we do to help export energy quicker out of Nevada and import as well clean energy so we could rely less on the natural gas that we currently have? And Governor Sisolak asked us to come up with that plan, our CEO, and we did. By 2020, started to get state approval to build a $2.5 billion transmission system through Nevada, which we could not have gotten to where we are in 2022 as quickly as we have been. In fact, we should have our DEPA and our authorization to move forward on the first phase, which is a 400-mile line from Las Vegas up to Reno, straddling the Nevada-California border, that's going to access thousands of acres of solar energy zones identified by the Obama administration as prime areas for renewable development. That'll be finished, and we'll start construction 2024. Rapid fire execution to be able to build a transmission
That's
line
huge.
that quick. And then the second portion of the line, our utility commission told us, no, don't build the second line yet, and we can revisit this in 2026 later, once you're done building the first portion of the line. That was in March of 21. By May of 21, the state legislature said, no, we're directing the utility commission. So once again, strong federal and as well as governor and legislative support. They said, do the entire line. And so we'll have both lines completed by 2028. And that is going to be a game changer for us. We currently have 5,000 megawatts of renewables in our system, either in our system today or under construction today. And this is going to open up, and the demand we're seeing, developers, we've got 21 gigawatts of developer interest because of these transmission lines. Could not, again, have occurred without that cooperation.
You know, we're talking a lot about electrification, and there are other sources, as the governor noted, that could help us to get to net zero. Some of those would include, and I always consider, even though it's electrification, DG as that type of source. Getting away from remote transmission and remote generation is going to be key. But, you know, there's a lot of opportunity for hydrogen, fuel cell technology, biomass technology. What is it that each of you are doing? Where do you see the stake of those additional sources of mitigation that could occur with respect to hydrogen, biomass, storage? We have Lithium Valley in California. We sit on the 4th largest reserve of lithium, and I'm on the Lithium Commission appointed by the Speaker. And we're trying to identify how do we close the economics. We're the ones that push for zero emission standards on vehicles, but yet we're not getting the full economics of it on production of lithium, and we could sustainably extract it from the Salton Sea area. So we're looking for that next production chain of economics that we could capitalize on and bring Imperial Valley out of poverty to good economics as a result. What is it that you're doing with respect to hydrogen and biomass and storage?
So we believe that a digital energy platform at the distribution level is a big deal. We've had a smart grid for a long time with respect to generation and transmission. You flip on a light in your house and it all adjusts, right? It's pretty awesome. The distribution part is where we need work. And that needs to be funded, by the way, so that utilities can do that work, by the way. But I'll just say that digital energy platform should be able to take in any source, whether it's geothermal, hydrogen fuel cell, whatever, and be able to then convey that energy locally. We have a project in California in Sonoma where we have over solar in the summertime because of they have less solar radiance. In the wintertime, they don't have as much, so we over solar in the summertime, and we run it through an electrolyzer and make hydrogen. We talk about hydrogen a lot as a fuel. We think of it as a storage media, especially seasonal storage. So we overproduce in the summer, and then in the wintertime, when the solar's not producing enough, we run that hydrogen back through a fuel cell to make a vineyard, in this case, net zero. So I think that electrolyzer technology this is owned by a billionaire, and he can afford it, and we are thanking him for making it affordable for the rest of us later, right? But we're in the early adoption phase, but we have to keep on that until it becomes affordable as a storage media. And then we can also talk about it as a fuel. But again, it's being creative and looking at all of it and trying a lot of different things and putting our bets in a few different places. Because it's one thing to have a goal, it's quite a different thing to have a plan. And we need to be working a plan every day.
Right on. And Pat?
We're in a little different place because we're a smaller regulated utility. And you don't want to put on demonstration projects, right? Or science projects, as sometimes regulators call them, on your grid, because they want you to produce with sources that you have now. So we do it a couple ways. One, we belong to the Electric Power Research Association, which does research for all of the companies in the United States. And we have a lot of members in Europe and Japan and China. It's a worldwide organization that looks at pooling our money and putting it into new technologies. So we do it that way. And again, it's another reason we're looking to partner with Avangrid and Iberdrola, because if Pedro was up here, he would tell you all about the innovation that Iberdrola and Avangrid have on hydrogen and other things. We are early adopters of batteries. They are not ours. Others bring them in. So if you can get those lithium economics down, we would be very helpful. If you could get the lithium availability up, and if you could get our solar panels out of Customs and Border Patrol, we'd be really thankful for that. Because right now we've got some issues that are impacting the clean energy transition. And then what we're doing is working with local communities. Biomass is hard. Biomass is controversial. It's hard, and that's an area where we have worked with and will continue to work with the local communities, because as you've mentioned, there's a lot of forest, there's a lot of bark beetle kill that would be perfect for biomass. It really hasn't taken off yet, and I think that's where we could use some state and federal policies to help get that to go.
That's interesting. I think there's a tremendous opportunity with biomass, especially with biochar, carbon credits, offsets, and so forth. And it could be, with the amount of dead wood out there, a huge supply that could displace coal and fossil fuels as closing the renewables gap. So Tony, what's your thoughts on it?
Also biogas. We've had for 20 years power purchase agreement with the Republic of Silver State in Southern Nevada to harness the gas coming from their landfills. So I mean, we started those decades ago. We signed our first geothermal plant power purchase agreement in 1986, 10 years before our RPS requirements came into play. With lithium, you said California's number 4, Nevada's number 1 in the country for potential reserves. Unfortunately, most of the mining activity is locked up in environmental litigation today, so that's a real cause. And we have 1,000 megawatts of lithium battery storage already operating or under construction today. And so by the time, now that everybody is focused on lithium, we have Tesla, their mega factory outside of Reno. We've got Panasonic and their battery facility, and now, lo and behold, obviously lithium prices are skyrocketing, and that's just a product of the typical market. But we're looking at everything from pumped hydro. Once again, even though we're in a 20-year drought in Southern Nevada, there are some possible opportunities for pumped hydro storage, but we're looking at all of them. Hydrogen, obviously hydrogen fuel buses are a big issue, and something that our regional transportation commissions that we have partnerships with are looking at very closely. They're currently doing compressed natural gas and looking to expand into hydrogen quickly. We have the natural gas facilities in Reno. We serve the city of Reno for that. Our parent company, Berkshire Hathaway Energy, has made a lot of investment recently with acquisitions on the East Coast for pipelines, but the future in all of those is hydrogen. So we're watching that closely.
They've also been very active in Imperial Valley. Jonathan Weisgold and all those
I work with Jonathan weekly.
And he's Mr. Lithium these days.
He is.
But we have about 6 minutes left, and I really want to get to, where some of the rubber meets the road. I think every day about 4 million Americans go to work in the clean energy sector. And California alone, I think, is 500-some thousand folks. It's no longer something in the future, it's now. What do you think? There are people in the room that want to participate in these economics. What is it that each of your interests are doing to assure that folks here and around the community, especially in the Latino community, who have been disproportionately impacted as a result of the historical practices, how is it that we could participate in these economics, and what is it that you might be doing in order to assure that?
On the DC side, and look, more and more of your house is DC now. We have to start thinking about DC. Tesla versus Edison is old news, and we need to start thinking about a low voltage DC, especially in the distribution sector, which could lead to certifications and on-ramps for workforce that are heretofore not available when you've got 2 journeymen and a $250,000 truck at the top of a pole. There are some things we could really do in workforce development in the distribution side of things by strengthening that part, as we talked about, that issue. And then, with respect to equity, I think we need to really be careful with policy and really think about what the long-term effects of things are. Okay, let's make sure that every new construction has solar on the roof, as California did. Well, if I live in California, and I used to, and I know about public safety power shutoffs, I'm going to go buy a battery, and I'm going to go buy an inverter, and I'm going to make sure that solar works in the next shutoff, right? Okay, so that means that the utility doesn't get the cost recovery from my house Guess who pays for that? All the people who can't afford those extra things. I think we sometimes unintentionally make the equity gap worse by our policy. And I think I'm an old electrical and systems engineer. I think we have to think about the whole ecosystem before we just do something that sounds good.
Good. And Pat?
And I will echo what Gary said there. I think it's unintended consequences of policy that can make that gap work. But I think a couple things. We are very fortunate at PNM. Our workforce is more than 50% minority. So we tend to attract folks. We make minority recruiting a key goal for ourselves. And we have very aggressive minority purchasing programs. We're going to strengthen those with our friends from Avangrid and Iberdrola, so to make sure those folks can take part in these new economics. The other thing, and especially here in New Mexico, we talk about our Native American, our indigenous friends. The Energy Transition Act made sure that we helped provide economic development and education, which is key to the folks that are impacted by closures of coal plants. We've sponsored scholarships with the Navajo Nation for probably 10 years now to get the folks the education they need to take part, not just necessarily in the new energy economy, but to take part in the broader economy. And we are working diligently with our friends at the Navajo Nation and the Pueblos about development of renewable energy projects on their land so they can take part in the economics that way. I also think it's thinking about environmental justice concerns. When you, for example, if you cite solar panels, you can pay somebody up front, but it might make more sense to structure it to give them payments over time, right? So they get the money in and can send their kids to school, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the kind of things that we just all have to be much more sensitive to as we go to this new energy economy.
Right on. And Tony?
Yes, I would echo everything Pat indicated. We're doing a lot of the same type of programs, but last year we were authorized to spend $100 million initially in electric vehicle infrastructure rollout by our legislature as well as our governor. And we had that 40% requirement that you referenced that President Biden had signed the executive order on. The plan we filed has well over 50% of those dollars going to economically impacted and underinvested areas. So that's something that we're very, very active in. But we also have to look at it from the aspect of, actually the most fun part of my job is overseeing our NV Energy Foundation, where we give out $5 to $6 million. The bulk of which goes to K through 12, but also higher education, through our university system. And so we're heavily investing in STEM education because we employ the most engineers in the entire state. We employ more UNLV engineers and University of Nevada, Reno engineers. We fund, specific minority scholarships for that engineering field, and that is how we're going to develop the next, generation of C-suite members. They have to be obviously experts in their field, but they also have to be leaders. I was recruited to the company when I was 40 years old. I was a partner in the biggest law firm in the state. I had a high-profile lobbying, public policy type of law practice, but I was also the lead lobbyist for then Nevada Power. And so then they recruited me to become the senior vice president. Today I'm executive vice president, oversee a number of additional areas of the company. But we have an obligation in our recruiting, and kudos to Pat and her tenure at PNM in terms of how they're hiring. And I'd note that Pat in 2018 was chair of our industry-wide organization in Washington, D.C., trade association, the Edison Electric Institute. And Pat, in her tenure in 2018, was the first chair to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion as chairs, and that has been providing incredible benefits to our industry since. So there's, because we have the opportunity, we have the ability to spend, because we all play such large roles in our state economies, we are leaders in each of those areas, and that's something we're very proud of.
Right on. Well, thank you each for agreeing to participate on this panel. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Nelson, for, I started in the impact and clean tech world. I was part of a lawsuit that was filed in 1989 against the EPA for violation of its own Clean Air Act. And I was driving an electric vehicle in 1993. It was a RAV4 lead acid battery. Remember those? Toyota. And now I'm onto my Taycan Porsche Turbo S, which is 980 horsepower equivalent. So we have moved along. And I would suggest that everyone here has an opportunity to participate in these economics. Let's not wait. Let's not hold the door open. Let's not think about it. It's here. And you have some of the architects that have been working on this for the past 30 years, all of it now coming to economic fruition, where we have to be bold and courageous and embrace this opportunity. Don't be scared of success. Go out and grab it. And there's a lot of opportunity with the EV infrastructure. Someone's got to build it. Solar panels, someone's got to install them. Hydrogen, someone needs to go out and put the infrastructure in. It's all opportunity for folks in this room. Let's not miss it. Thank you for joining us. And let's give a nice round of applause for our wonderful panel here.
Thank you to our panel this morning for your time and valuable insights. Now to offer closing remarks to our morning plenary, let's give a warm round of applause to USHCC Chair-elect, Mr. Nelson Rainieri, Jr.
Good morning. Buenos dias. It's wonderful to see you all here today. It's going to be a hard act to follow. And it's wonderful not to be on Zoom, no? And it's also great to kind of see each other. So turn to someone and say, you look beautiful. Because we're seeing each other without masks. And you can also say, turn to the other person and say, I can't see you, it's too dark. But that's okay. I'm very honored to serve as chair-elect of the board, and I want to start with an acknowledgement to this amazing board, this amazing team that just a few weeks ago put together what I think, and I've been going to the USHCC Energy, legislative conferences for many years, the best conference. We were oversold. We had participants from so many different sectors, and it showed that we're here, as Tom said. We're here. We want to play a valuable role in building it back better. And this idea of this energy conference, I just want to briefly share kind of 3 reasons why we wanted to do that, and a framework that I would like to get your feedback for going forward. But before that, just another acknowledgement for all of you taking time to come here today, and all our sponsors for supporting us on this novel idea. It really means a great deal to us. I've been in the energy sector for about 20 years or so. I work for a principal in the ESG practice for Point B, a management consulting firm. But before that, spent about 20 years at Liberty Power, which we took as just an idea and scaled it to probably the largest Hispanic-owned energy company in the country. And then last year, Texas, ended the story. So we've seen it, I think, all. But I mentioned that because, back to Tom's point, there is a role for us. So why did we want to have this energy conference? I would suggest three reasons really come to mind. You heard from tremendous leaders, a market cap collectively of over $100 billion, the best, I think, in terms of leadership we're seeing here, about that energy transition. And that transition poses both challenges and opportunities, rather. On the risk and the challenge side, we've heard about that. We see the last 8 years of the hottest on the planet, that we need to get to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We understand, I think, more and more clearly that time is not on our side. At the same time, we also see the tremendous amount of opportunity. Bloomberg reported $500 billion in terms of decarbonization capital was deployed last year. So we want to make sure we're part of that. Secondly, we see the energy sector, and specifically IOUs, as the cornerstone, or really playing a critical leadership role. And what a great panel. Let's give it up again for that panel. Thank you for taking time, nos respetaron, to come here. These are very busy individuals, and I want to say a special thanks to Tom. I've known Tom for a long, long time. 20 years ago, he was just not just driving those cars, but he was ahead of the curve before there was a curve, talking about concepts and terms that today are becoming kind of the vernacular, the everyday